Hello, everybody. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Brandon Speck and John Davis of the Oxford Citizen. We're going to talk recruiting for the next half hour. These guys kind of take the lead in our coverage there. Brandon Speck is in touch with all the high schools. John Davis is the man of many talents here with his Ole Miss coverage and the local high schools there in Oxford. They got a pulse on what's going on. We're going to talk recruiting right now. Guys, how are you?
Good.
I'm doing well, Parrish.
Hey, glad y'all could be with us this morning. And look, let's just jump right into it. Brandon, I'll start with you. High school championships this weekend. You've heard me in the office complain about how we, for years, have put our premier high school football event in the worst stadium it could possibly be in for the experience for the players. I'm absolutely thrilled to see the rotation beginning between the campuses at Mississippi State this year and then Ole Miss. But let's talk about these championships a little bit. Who are some of the top prospects that will be participating this weekend?
Well, JD and I got to go down to the press conference on Monday down in Clinton and talk about this some, and there's quite a few. I think JD will agree. I mean, you got Jamal Peters is a Mississippi State commit. He's a safety at Bassville. I think one service has him the number one player in the state. One maybe at number two. Is that right, JD?
That's correct.
I think he's 1 and 2. So you got a lot of good ones. He's one to watch. Maybe one people are real excited about. But I'll tell you one matchup I'm excited about. You get Oxford and Laurel. You got two receivers that one in Metcalf, DK Metcalf, who's going to Ole Miss. He's a junior. Another junior in Octavius Cooley. The more I look at it, it's very exciting. He's considered an Ole Miss lane. So he's also got State and Alabama and a handful of SEC offers. But they're going head to head, offense versus offense. But that's one that could be very, very exciting, and both of them could get a lot of catches. I think it's Saturday night.
JD, look, man, tell us about these Oxford kids, and is this a year where most of the talent, at least in these championships, is in the junior class?
Yeah, I think in this year's championship, most of your best players are going to be in that junior class. I mean, alone, if the projections continue on, right now you've got DK Metcalf from Oxford, wide receiver, that's rated as the #1 player by Rivals for 2016. And then Cooley is number 8. So right there in one game, you've got #1 and number 8, and a lot of those projections change, but at the same time, I'm thinking those probably are going to stay pretty close to what you've got there. So that's just the starting point. Then Oak Grove's got wide receiver that's in the top 10 right now. There's Jeffrey Simmons from Knox City County, defensive end, that's going to be in the top 15, and he's a 2016 guy. So. Not that there's not good 2015 kids. I think a lot of what the state championship teams wise for me though, looking at it, are 2016 kids. Oxford's been here for the second straight year in the state championship. Next year they have just as good of a chance to play at Ole Miss in the state championship. Every one of their offensive players are underclassmen, meaning they're a junior or sophomore led on offense alone. With DK Metcalf. Jack Abraham's another top guy. If Jack Abraham can do everything for you, if he's 6'2", he's got every offer in the world. Doesn't mean that he's any less of a quarterback. The bottom line is, coaches like to get height, weight, all that kind of stuff. But he's still a very exciting quarterback. Both these quarterbacks in this Oxford-Laurel game are record setters, if you will. Just down the line, of course, Sal Panola, Dre Porter. That's another one on Friday night. That's a 2016 kid, defensive end that Ole Miss really likes. A lot of schools like. Kind of more of a rush-in kind of guy, an outside linebacker look, 200 pounds, 205 pounds, but can really get after the quarterback. So every year you have these great teams that get there, and there's some good seniors. But in this case, there seem to be a little bit more juniors, talented juniors, highly regarded juniors than seniors this year.
Hey, Brandon,
Howard.
Go ahead, Brandon.
The two quarterbacks in the 5A game JD was talking about, Keon Howard and Jack Abraham from Laurel and Oxford. Those two are leading 5A in passing. That's 1 and 2, Howard and Abraham. And Abraham missed, JD, 4 games?
Correct.
He's still second in 5A in passing yards. I think he's 1 touchdown behind Howard, maybe 39, 38, something like that. But it's just exciting. And you got more guys who aren't even on the radar yet. You got a kid in County City, Brighton Sykes, who is just a bruiser. He's got, I think, maybe 1,600 yards or so. He's averaging like 11.5 yards a carry. So, guys like that who are also trying to get on those ranking services and trying to get on the map, they're fun to kind of keep up with too.
Hey, Brandon, I want to ask you a little bit about, and JD, you chime in as well here, about a team that's not in playing this championship weekend. Starkville High School was just like rolling through people, like most of the season, and then had that really good matchup with South Panola in the 6A semifinals. Talk about that team a little bit. What made Starkville go so much this year? What type of prospects are there?
They've got so many guys. I mean, I think JD and I talked about this one time too. Maybe 6, 7 guys who can play SEC football. You got guys on the line like Kobe Jones, and their offense is led by Brady Davis, who's going to Memphis. A lot of people thought the quarterback gets some SEC offers. He's 6'4", but those never really came. He's got stuff like Eastern Michigan and things like that. But he's pretty firm on going to Memphis. His dad, I think, played basketball maybe there. I know went there. So he kind of wants to help them get to the next level. And Memphis won 9 games this year, so he's excited about going up there. But two receivers that just you can't say enough about, A.J. Brown and Raphael Leonard. They're both unbelievable guys. I mean, A.J.'s a junior, Ralph's a senior. A.J.'s got offers from Ole Miss, State, Alabama, and Auburn. And he told me what he's waiting on is LSU. He wants to go to LSU. So if that comes, I think that's a very strong possibility. But Lance Pogue, Sapanola's coach, told me he's never seen a duo like that. He's seen some big-time games. He said we had guys draped all over them, and I think both had 8, 9 catches for more than 100 yards against Sapanola. So if there's one guy to watch next year, it's definitely A.J. Brown.
Well, I was going to chime in with the fact of Lorenzo Dantzler is another guy, along with Kobe, that I think I told you was on the sidelines at Ole Miss game. They were both there as prospects for the Egg Bowl. Lorenzo Dantzler, and Jones, and you were real big on Kobe Jones. He's projected as a both either side of the ball guy. Now, I don't know what you think is maybe better for him, but when you're 6'5", 265, and can move like he can, you could be a guard, you could be a defensive tackle, you could be something, and Dantzler's kind of highly regarded. He's another one for the 2016 class. Starkville's going to be back. Starkville's probably, it's crazy to say this, they're going to be good every year, but I mean, I think they're really going to be good next year. Tough to have lost when you could have played right down the road for the state championship in Mississippi State, but again, I think Starkville's got a lot of talent. You're right, Brady Davis. I think with the year that Memphis had, it looks like Fuente's going to get an extension there. I think he's going to be something for them. I don't know if Fuente stays there throughout his career, but if he does, a guy like Brady Davis fits his system pretty well. And I think he'll learn a lot. I think Fuente's shown that he can make a quarterback better. Guy that from that game and that you saw in person, I actually talked about him with you, what you thought about Henderson, running back from South Panola. This is a guy that came to the combine, here at Lafayette High School, the Southern Elite Combine, put on by 24/7 and ran a record, just under a 4.3. I mean, this has got a lot of speed. He's been on the radar. I think it was 2,000 yards rusher. I don't know where he ends up. I know he really wants to be at Ole Miss. I think he's going to help somebody, and that's another really talented running back in these, this weekend to kind of look for.
He was named Gatorade Player of the Year this morning. I'm sorry, Henderson was. And
okay.
We talked about it Monday. He said he wants him to have a really big game on Friday so he can kind of get some more notice. I mean, they're really pushing the guy. He's super fast, like you say. He's shifty, and he's also got some power. So I think he's an SEC back. I mean, I could be wrong, but I love the guy. It was something weird about the South Panola Starkville game that kind of occurred Saturday in Oxford as well. South Panola's up by 3, and Henderson throws a halfback pass for a touchdown to seal it with like 2 minutes left, and then you get to the Egg Bowl, and Wilkins does the same thing to Core. So it kind of happened back-to-back nights, 2 halfback passes to win 2 games. I thought that was kind of
neat. So you think Hugh Freeze saw that, and that's where he got the idea?
Well, I asked Pogue if he had talked to Freeze. He said no. He said no, we didn't even get to watch much of the game. We were practicing for Oak Grove. So he said he didn't, but it looked real similar.
Hey, listen, let's talk about the small schools playing this weekend a little bit. Any prospects there, any sleepers, guys who might not be getting a lot of notoriety right now? Calhoun City, I know the 1A game is Cathedral out of Natchez and St. Aloysius, is that right?
And out of Vicksburg, and they're 70 miles apart on Highway 61, have the same diocese. Miss Cook, who actually grew up with Johnny Hill, she told me this. I forgot to mention this to Brandon. I went and talked to her at the press conference. She grew up with Johnny Hill in Holly Springs, and she has got a hat that one of the priests created with it's got sewn in the middle with the two allegiances because she's the superintendent of both schools.
Hey, moving away from the championships a little bit, guys, who do you see as the top uncommitted prospects in the state? We're still we're just a couple of months out from signing day. Who's still out there?
Well, Gabriel Campbell from Yazoo City is the top one, and if you will, in the top 10, most everybody's top 10 that's uncommitted from Yazoo City. With Javon Patterson going down a couple weeks ago now from Petal, that was really kind of wrapped up the top 10 for the most part. You know, going into the Miss Al game, usually there's not this many, but now there's 8 and 9 committed guys, if you will. You know, like I said, he mentioned Peters. Peters did it back in the summer. You go through Leo Lewis was back at the start of football season. A lot of these guys aren't that, you know, there's maybe 4 going into the Miss Al game, and the Miss Al game kind of brings back that next level of you know, kind of coverage, you know, where you going, what schools are looking at you. I'm not saying that's not going to happen, but it's kind of rare to have this many guys already kind of verbally committed to go to a school. So the last kind of remainder out there is Gabriel Campbell, defensive end from Yazoo City. And then, you know, maybe Brandon can think of somebody else outside in like the top 15, top 20, but it's most of your top 10 guys are gone.
I'll tell you one to watch out for. That's Tupelo linebacker Justin Clifton. He's not a 4 or 5-star guy, but he's really picking up steam, and there's rumors of some big-name schools coming to Tupelo this week to look at him. He's an Arkansas State commit, but there's some making a push, and Ole Miss is one of those I'm hearing. So, I mean, he's not a real big guy, 6'1", but he's one of the hardest hitters I've seen in a long, long time. So I think that's a guy that you can watch out for, that if somebody pops up on the radar and is a surprise, I think Justin Clifton, the Tupelo linebackers, is the guy to watch out for.
Brandon, who's the safety at Tupelo that recently changed from Mississippi State to Georgia? Red. What's his name? Jarvis Wilson?
Jarvis Wilson. He's super talented. JD and I talked about him. JD and I spent like 7.5, 8 hours in the car Monday, so we had plenty of time to discuss these guys. And Jarvis is a guy that, without him, Tupelo doesn't win as many games as they do. I mean, he's just a game changer, great kid, unbelievable talent. He flipped from Mississippi State Bulldogs to Georgia Bulldogs. Wherever he goes, that's a big loss for State. I mean, he's the difference maker, and maybe immediately. That's just the kind of athlete and talent he is.
What's the story there? Why do you think the change for him?
I don't know. I think it may be one of those things where, you know, the first ACC school came in, and kids get, I guess they catch crap for this sometimes, but you have to say yes, don't you? I mean, if you get the first one, and you have to say yes in case you don't get another one. I think that's just a safety blanket. And I think he came in and visited Georgia. They came in late, and State was the first one on him, but Georgia came in late, and he went over to Athens and liked it, and just simply changed his mind.
I'll tell you what now. Go ahead, JD.
Well, I was going to add real quick. Sometimes it's called hot box. It's kind of the term, at least among media, talking about this kind of a phenomenon where they'll come to a camp, they have a really good camp, and you know, they're kind of offered, and the kid may not be completely ready, but then they'll say, well, look, you know, we can go on to the next guy. I mean, it's just that there's a feel sometimes for I've got to say yes. And I think the reality of the situation is, you know, the schools are all trying to get their numbers. Every coach has got a quota. You've got to. It's just like being a salesman. You've got to get a certain amount of kids. You've got to be able to get a certain amount of positions. You've got to get your class filled. So it's that combination there. And then there's some times where, you know, a kid just feels like, well, I like this school a lot. I'm going to say yes, and then they realize 2 weeks later, oh, wait a second, maybe I do want to go check everything out. You know, that's why you also, in my opinion, you've seen a lot of younger kids go and see schools prior to, why the camp circuit has grown. They get to at least see the campuses before they really get to their senior year and have the chance to go on their 5 official visits.
Tell you what, recently Ole Miss and State both picked up commitments from a couple of JUCO guys in the top 100 for rivals. It could help both of these. JD, you want to take that one, talk about those guys a little bit?
Well, Tony Bridges is the most recent one from the state, Mississippi Gulf Coast. Again, talking about a flip, he went from Auburn to Ole Miss, and that was a big coup. He's rated 4th on the Rivals Top 100. Tony Bridges is a cornerback, about 6'1", 190 pounds, highly regarded, kind of like a T. Shepard was last year. You know, everybody went bananas about T. Shepard, rightly so. He's going to be like that kind of a mold. I mean, he's a guy that can change a game from the standpoint of taking away the best wide receiver. Play multiple positions in this defensive backfield, just like T. Shepard. It's scary. I use the word scary for the other teams more so. I really think, you know, with a healthy T. Shepard, with a Tony Bridges, with a improving Kendarius Webster, this Ole Miss secondary, this Ole Miss defense looks like it's still going to be in good shape. Even losing Sinquez Golson and Cody Pruitt, guys like that, I think that's how you stay good. Parrish when you have to lose a Cody Pruitt and a Sinquez Golson, both All-Americans, different years, but both All-Americans, you replace them with these kind of players, not always from junior college ranks, just these kind of players, these level talented players, high school or junior college ranks.
Yeah, you go back to August with this Ole Miss team, and, you know, nobody knew that Sinquez Golson was going to blow up the way he did. You had Hugh Freeze really kind of shaking his head in disgust a little bit at the injury to T. Shepard because he called him his best cover corner. I mean, that's what he thought of T. Shepard. So that guy has set out a year. So, you know, he'll recover, he'll come back, but you had Golson kind of blow up and take his place. But, you know, now you lose Golson, and you got to figure, you know, with the help coming in, and, you know, and the fact that T. Shepard is still there, didn't spend a year of eligibility. I mean, you know, you're right. They're really stockpiling there.
Yeah, I really feel good about their secondary long term. I think the Moore brothers are going to help. I'm interested to see where D.K. Buford is in the spring. Obviously, you got Tony Connor, which is, you know, going back and forth between a safety and a linebacker type look that he gives you there. Chief Brown, a Cam Wardway. Speaking of recruiting, you know, we're talking about recruiting as a whole in Mississippi right now, but Cam Wardway, just real quick, he's a freshman that could come in and play kind of like what Kendarius Webster did. Highly regarded kid out of Giles County up there in Tennessee, where Bo Wallace is from. They're big on him. He's had a good senior year. He's a guy that can potentially play a little bit as a freshman. So, you know, it's a stockpiling thing, and that's what recruiting is. I think that's the reality of why it's so popular and why we do it so much, and why it helps, in my opinion, helps me cover Ole Miss. I know that much more about that player to write a feature on them, and at the same time, if you don't get good players, if you don't continue to get, you know, you can't miss type thing in this league. That's why it's so important to recruit well every year, and because, you know, if you're going to compete for championships, you got to replace good guys with good guys.
All right, guys, I want to hear from both of you on this. We'll start with you, Brandon. Ole Miss, you know, a big, an unexpected win in the Egg Bowl. Does that impact recruiting in any way in Mississippi? Who wins and loses that game?
Yeah, I think usually it does. I mean, it's like JD touched on earlier, a lot of guys are already committed. I don't think you're going to see a lot of flipping because of the Egg Bowl. I mean, because both teams had such good years. If, you know, State's 10-2 and ranked number one for so long, however many weeks they were, I don't think you're going to see a lot of movement as far as people already committed. But I think you got some younger guys. You know, JD's mentioned those 16 guys, and, you know, some of the 17 guys that it can have an impact on. But as far as immediately, I don't think it's going to have that much to do with a guy that's already been committed to one or the other.
JD, you hearing any impact from that game?
I think it has an impact, but it's a more marginal feel, I believe, when it comes to directly getting guys. I think it makes a bigger thing for what it looks like for your future. I think he's absolutely right. Brandon's right about that. I mean, it always makes an impact. Every win, every loss makes an impact. How big in this game? Maybe a little bigger than a regular season game, obviously bigger than a non-conference game. When you're going, though, when you've already got guys committed, and like he said, both having very good years, and you're comfortable with that coach and all that, it's going to take a lot just for one game to necessarily always flip you or flip you over. If that's the situation, you were probably already thinking it in the first place. But what it does when you go into those living rooms, in Ole Miss's case, I'm just going to use them as an example since they won. Hey, we finished strong. We're moving in the right direction. It's a momentum thing. It's opening the door to talking about the entire season and why you need to stay with us or why you need to be with us. I think everything can be used in recruiting the way you want it to be used. Again, I use the word salesmanship. That's what recruiting is. If you have the ability to convince somebody that this is where you need to be, you use everything you can. The Egg Bowl, in this case, for Ole Miss, is something that they're going to use. Whether they get a bunch of flips from it, I don't think so. But anything and everything can be used in recruiting, and this is a big one for sure.
I think last year State's Egg Bowl win propelled them this year. I mean, look what they did in the Egg Bowl. They won in that overtime game, and then they had this season. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the Egg Bowl can really push you, like JD said, momentum. And I think that had something to do with the year they had. And I did ask Lance Mancuso, Bassfield's coach, about Peters, and if the Egg Bowl would make him want to change his mind, because he's kind of been a guy that's out there hanging. And he said no. He said Peters is going to Mississippi State, and he'd be incredibly surprised if it had any effect on it. So I just don't think it will flip guys. And like JD said, if they flip, they've been thinking about it before the Egg Bowl.
And I will add this too, because I've talked about this ideas for stories down at the state championship with Brandon. I plan to ask a few of them, 3 or 4 or 5 of them. I'd be interested to see what they say. They may give a completely different answer than what I did. I don't know that. I'm basing it on the few times I have talked to kids in the past. So I will be interested to see what they have to say. I still think you ask the question, even if they say no, it's not going to be changed, because you don't know until you ask. But I'm willing to believe going into the state championship game, before I really start talking to kids about if that game just really changed a lot for you, that it's more of a momentum thing for the coaches to just use in general.
Do you guys get the sense that the discussions of these coaches with other schools, their names being linked to jobs, obviously that's a little bit less of a deal for Ole Miss right now, having come to terms with Hugh Freeze, but Dan Mullen's name is still out there, Michigan, Nebraska, things like that. Is that making an impact on recruiting in Mississippi?
Well, I mean, I would answer yes, it will be, especially the longer it goes. I don't know if people really know if Dan Mullen's name is – I mean, everybody's name gets put out there, it seems like, nowadays. But I think if it doesn't get addressed, I would think Scott Strickland's working on a long-term contract, just like Ross Bjork did with Hugh Freeze. He's got to be happy with 10-2 record, a chance to go to a major bowl. I don't know that, but I'm just guessing that's the case. And if you're another school, if you're Nebraska, if you're Michigan, why do you not look at Dan Mullen? Look at what he's done. I mean, just like Hugh Freeze, why do you not look at Hugh Freeze? I mean, he's done a great job and can recruit and all those kind of things, offensive-minded. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you look at both of these coaches. So I think it affects recruiting the longer it goes, Parrish. I think the first couple of days it's just talk, and the kids probably don't pay attention to it as much, but they'll pay attention to it if it goes a week and a half, and there's that uncertainty, and it will definitely impact recruiting if Dan Mullen leaves and his entire staff goes with him.
Well, it's an open-ended question until one of two things happens. Either State comes up with a contract and they agree to terms with Mullen, or Mullen says, I am not a candidate at school A, B, or C. I mean, only something that definitive will stop the discussion and speculation. Brandon, shifting gears a little bit, am I wrong in my belief that more Mississippi kids are staying in Mississippi these days? What do you think?
No, they are. It's a great thing. I mean, look on those rosters from the Egg Bowl Saturday, and there's so many kids that are from here that play high school ball in the state. And if not high school, JUCO ball. That's the neat thing about JUCO. JUCO brings some non-state guys in who become Mississippi guys in 2 years in JUCO ball. But I talked with Dante Jones, Louisville's wide receiver, a state commit earlier this year when they played over in Aberdeen. And that's one thing he said. He said it doesn't matter. I want all my guys to go to Mississippi State with me, but I want them to stay in state. I think he even threw Southern Miss in the mix. Just keep those guys here. I mean, Alabama and Auburn don't need help from our talented guys in this state, and you can see what it's done. It's no coincidence that, and Dan Mullen has been fantastic at that, and especially finding kind of the lower, two-star guys or guys that don't have stars, and Mississippi guys like a Jamion Lewis and guys, and just developing them into great college football players. So I don't think it's a coincidence that the Mississippi guys are staying and that Ole Miss and State are having these kind of seasons. That's just the kind of talent we have in this state.
Is it a correct perception, JD? I want you to hit this too. In fact, I think you brought it up with me the other day, but is it a correct perception that Mullen really kind of reels in the Mississippi 2 and 3 stars, and that Freeze has more success around the region? Obviously, gets involved with the biggest recruits in Mississippi. Javon Patterson and others are examples of that. But is that a correct perception of those guys in recruiting? Brandon, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at State's roster, and there are a lot of guys like that who weren't all that highly regarded coming out of high school. I watched Jamie Lewis play in the state championship against Channing Ward and Aberdeen, I think in 08, 09 maybe, and Lewis was very, very good. But a lot of times you see those guys that are very, very good in high school, and you don't think much of them as SEC players. Small, undersized guy. Even a guy like Jonathan Banks, who came out of East Webster and was a star at East Webster, but who knew? And I just think guys like that, Mullen has done a fantastic job. And he doesn't mind taking a flyer on those guys. He'll bring them in. And look, he was the first guy on Chris Jones. Before Chris Jones was a 5-star guy going to play the Under Armour All-Star game, Dan Mullen offered the guy. And I don't know if that was a deal with just him being so big and raw potential, but he sees something in those guys. He's got a great eye for that.
I'll go back to. I'll start with Chris Jones. It's funny that that was blew up, huge senior year. Is he Ole Miss? I mean, is he going to be? Is he in Oxford? Is he in Starkville? That whole deal. And I just laughed. I kind of remembered, Richard Russo, used to be at Water Valley, defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach at Independence. And Chris Jones used to be at Nettleton High School. He used to be a two-way player, and he came to play basketball at Water Valley. And he was bigger than everybody else, just like he is now. And he was a sophomore, and I remember Russo going, gosh, he was so good. He's going to be really good in time. But at the same time, nobody knew about him. He was I think he actually liked basketball more at that point. And I do think that the perception is reality. If Mississippi State does a better job of getting guys, what I call getting guys to their system, keeping guys that nobody kind of knows about in the state on their thing. I think that's one of the reasons why the Egg Bowl is so much bigger. It seems like to their guys, why they seem to be more focused on it than not, is because they've got those guys that had a chip on their shoulder when they came there. Ole Miss has done a better job outside of the state of Mississippi. They do a good job with the top guys. They get guys from the state of Mississippi. I'm not saying that, but Ole Miss has a better national, even better regional approach and success rate. I think Mississippi State this year, moving forward, will do even better in that regard. But up until this year, I don't think they have done as well. And I think that's part of it is because they kind of rely on that approach. They kind of have that formula, if you will. Not a bad formula. I'm not criticizing it at all. I just, I've kind of analyzed it myself. And I think that's why they're so successful in as far as building with a lot of seniors, building with a lot of experience, redshirting guys. They play a lot less, fewer freshmen. And again, I think Ole Miss has done a better job outside. Laquan Treadwell from Chicago, Laramie Tunsil from Lake City. If you don't know much about geography, Lake City to Gainesville, Florida is about 30 miles. Okay, I mean that is the biggest get. That one still, I still am just like super impressed about getting Laramie Tunsil here from around Florida State, and away from Georgia. His coach at Lake City, Columbia High School, played at Florida State when Mark Richt was the offensive coordinator. Just those three things alone, just to take him out of that area and have him here playing for Ole Miss, huge get a couple years ago.
Last question, guys. We got a couple of minutes left. You both mentioned Chris Jones a few minutes ago. I know you remember the circus that was the Chris Jones recruiting a few years ago. He came in with the class of 2013. Robert Kimdichie was the #1 recruit in that class now at Ole Miss, and a lot of comparisons among those guys. Who is the circus in Mississippi this year? I can't imagine that there would be a circus that would compare to the Chris Jones recruiting at the very end. But is there that circus kind of recruit when things get really wild close to signing day? Brandon,
you want to go first, Brandon, or you want me to?
Brandon, start us off.
Okay. It's probably an unfair question because you'll never get a circus like you got with Chris Jones. I mean, that was late night visits to Oxford and Starkville and all the stuff that went on there. I mean, he had a hideout he's still playing basketball, had a hideout in gym, so people leave him alone. So I just don't think he's going to have that. I think next year it could be with the guy we talked about earlier, A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown and Starkville's, both of them on him unless LSU comes in and swipes him away, which could happen. But I mean, JD probably may know one that I'm not thinking about, but as far as comparable to that one, no, that may not ever happen again.
JD, you got a circus candidate?
No, you know why? Because all right. Let's just look at it from what we've got in front of us. Go back to a few minutes ago when you asked about the top 10 guys, and what I say, there's only one that is left in the top 10. You know, Patterson's an early enrollee. Once he made his decision, it's done. He signed his paperwork. I mean, everything is moving for him to be here in class in January. So when your top prospect alone is going to be an early enrollee, that kind of takes some of the fire away from it. You mentioned Jamal Peters. Well, you know, unless he wants to be a candidate, that kind of flip-flops back and forth, or maybe a Fletcher Adams who was on the fence deciding between State and Ole Miss. Unless some of these guys just want to make it a circus because they've already committed, it probably won't be one. Whereas, you know, like in Chris Jones's case, he wasn't a commitment at this point. You know, he wasn't. I think with them having so many of the top 10, so many of the highly regarded guys already committed now, unless they just want to start a fire, I don't think it's going to be that way.
Good stuff, guys, folks. We really appreciate you being with us today as we talk recruiting. We're going to be here again next Thursday and every Thursday until signing day. Be aware of that. Look for it. Come back and join us.